Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started, and we will let other people join us and catch up when they get in. Thank you everyone for joining us for the Virginia Farm to School Market Ready webinar. My name is French. I am the Value Chain Coordinator with Virginia Cooperative Extension. This webinar is specifically designed for producers, distributors, and cooperative extension agents or other support agencies to help all of you understand the school purchasing requirements and to consider school sales as a component of an overall marketing plan. If you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to submit them in the chat box, and we will try to save time at the end for questions. Throughout the presentation, Trista and I will be adding links to the chat box. So if you locate that now, then you can have access to those links, but we will also include most of them in a resources slide at the end. So today you'll be hearing from me as well as Trista Grigsby, the Farm to School Specialist in the Office of School Nutrition Programs for the Virginia Department of Education. I am the Value Chain Coordinator with Virginia Cooperative Extension in the School of Plant and Environmental Sciences. My position is funded by a USDA Local Food Promotion Program grant that works to enhance the connections between producers and buyers, move more local products across all the various steps of the value chain. I earned an agribusiness degree from Virginia Tech in the Department of Agricultural and Applied Economics, and I have several years of experience with Extension, but I've also worked with economic development and tourism in Shenandoah County, as well as a local cooperatively owned grocery store in Harrisonburg, the Friendly City Food Co-op. As the Farm to School Specialist for VDOE, Trista helps develop resources and trainings to provide school support for farm to school initiatives across Virginia with the goal of increasing procurement of local food and educational opportunities across classrooms, school gardens, cafeterias, and local farms. She's worked on 6 small-scale farms using organic practices in North Carolina, Oregon, Chile, and Virginia, before starting a Peacevine Farm in 2003, selling at farmers markets in DC and Warrenton. She also holds a teacher certification in horticulture and taught for 8 years in a K-12 program focused on farm to table before becoming the Director of Nutrition Services in Rappahannock County, where she increased procurement of local food by 8% in a year. Trista graduated with a bachelor's honors in English, concentrating in technical writing, and she has minors in biology and sustainable development from Appalachian State University. She's a wife and mother of 2 young sons who love to grow melons, shiitakes, and kale. So she is a perfect co-presenter for this presentation, and I hope you all will follow up with her afterwards if you don't already know Trista. She's a great resource for information. So a quick rundown of what we're going to be covering today. We will be presenting on specific strategies for communicating with school nutrition directors. We'll learn where to access their contact information for all of the school nutrition directors in Virginia. We will also provide 2 key tools for opening the line of communication with schools. We'll provide a brief overview of the procurement regulations that school must follow. Knowing that schools have a 9-month season, we will discuss growing and marketing strategies to work with them when school is in session and also during summer break. We will provide information about the 12 key crops to consider for schools at the wholesale market, and we will also address food safety, delivery, and distribution options, as well as price, because these are all factors that growers and distributors and school nutrition professionals must keep in mind. So a little bit about what is farm to school. When we say farm to school, it differs from school to school and division to division. They are incredibly different all across the state, but it usually includes one or more of the following components. It includes local procurement, so local foods that are purchased, promoted, and served in the cafeterias as a snack, or in the fresh fruits and vegetables program, or even the in the child and adult care food programs, like the at-risk after-school meal programs. Um, it can also be a taste test or in summer meals. Farm to school programs also include school gardens, where the students are able to get hands-on learning through gardening. It also includes educational components where students or teachers are able to incorporate farming and agriculture into their lessons, and go over how agriculture and food and health and nutrition are relate to the students' lives. Farm to school encompasses a wide variety of activities, and it's not just in K-12 schools, but there's also like early child care sites like preschools and things like that. There's quite a few different summer feeding programs. There's after school feeding programs, and even programs at Farm to University and adult daycare homes through the Child and Adult Care Food Program. I will mention that term a lot, the Child and Adult Care Food Program, and I might shorten it to CACFP throughout the presentation, but that's what that acronym means.
So in Virginia, the heart of our farm to school initiatives lies in the procurement of more local food in child nutrition programs, and here's why. When federal child nutrition funds are spent on local food, they're providing benefits for local farmers, agricultural communities, schools, and the students who learn there. There's research from Oregon that found that for every job created by school districts purchasing local foods, additional economic activity created another 1.67 jobs. And each dollar invested in farm to school can stimulate an additional 60 cents to $2.16 of local economic activity. Farm to school activities provide opportunities to connect nutrition and agriculture into core learning objectives. VDOE has launched the Virginia Harvest of the Month campaign, which I'll talk a little bit about later, and the Virginia Farm to School Network that will help increase resources, connections, and training opportunities for growers, extension agents, and school nutrition professionals. So this year, we're really excited. The Office of School Nutrition Programs and VDOE just awarded 6 Farm to School grants during Farm to School Month for $10,000 to $25,000 each to schools. And these grants are designed to increase procurement and help school divisions really build those strong teams so that it's a holistic program. Nutrition and agriculture should span between classrooms, school gardens, cafeterias, and within the community. And we're really excited to see what those 6 divisions do. VDOE also provides ongoing training and resources for school nutrition professionals to make local procurement and promotion just a normal, everyday part of their operations, not like a separate thing that feels hard. So one way that we do that, last summer we trained over 2,000 kitchen managers on how to use this new Harvest of the Month campaign to promote their local food features. And we really weave farm to school into every touch point, every time that we get together with all the school nutrition program directors. Farm to school is a component of that training. Virginia Cooperative Extension, the Virginia Cooperative Extension Small Farm Outreach Program at VSU, and Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services are really working hard to help create these market opportunities by informing farmers and creating opportunities for vendors and buyers to develop those relationships. There are VCE agents and master gardeners across the state who have really been on the ground providing that assistance in their localities. So I just want to take this moment to say thank you to Cooperative Extension and VDAX for all that you already are doing on the ground. And as always, with all of these initiatives, we want to know the impact that they're having. So we're trying to collect best practices to share those out as examples to others, and really get a little bit more of the research on how farm to school initiatives impact students and their communities. Farm to school activities are on the rise in Virginia. Data shows that 57% of school divisions reported participating in some sort of farm-to-school activities in 2013 and 14 school year. And then 3 years later, 75%, or 3/4 of school divisions, reported farm-to-school participation. Virginia is trending upward in all aspects of farm to school: procurement, school gardens, and connecting children to educational opportunities. So as a farmer or a marketer, a vendor, this is a great time to jump in on that, on the bandwagon. Increased marketing, resources, training, and opportunities for schools, school gardens, and farmers to connect, it seems to be making a difference so far. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. Purchases of local foods doubled in 3 years from $7.7 to $15.4 million. And that data is from a farm to school study that Virginia Tech and VDOE did in 2018, last year. For all training touch points with school nutrition directors, we are including modules on how to procure, how to promote it, how to plan your menus, how to serve local foods. Kitchen managers even got some knife skills lessons so that we can help make this procurement increase that we're hoping for. Likewise, partners in other agencies, such as Virginia Cooperative Extension, are helping farmers connect with those school nutrition professionals and understand how to sell to school. And that's what we're going to really dive into today. In the Office of School Nutrition Programs at Virginia Department of Ed, we really believe that every child deserves access to the freshest, healthy, locally grown foods. And it just makes sense that children in Virginia are eating food raised in Virginia. At the Virginia Farm to School Conference in March of this year, our First Lady, Mrs. Northam, challenged Virginia to increase annual procurement of local foods to $22 million by the year 2022. This challenge demonstrates that state leaders recognize the value that procurement of local foods provides to our state. It's really an opportunity to increase food access and learning opportunities for children, and it also provides that marketing opportunities for growers, fishers, and ranchers across the Commonwealth. And at the same time, the number of school gardens is growing in Virginia. As of August this year, there are 577 known school gardens in Virginia public schools. What we believe in the Office of School Nutrition Programs is that these school gardens are a bridge for tying that nutrition education with quality learning experiences in their classroom. Hands-on learning is the best for kids, and it really can be a learning lab that pulls health, wellness, and agriculture education into that contextual learning that makes education relevant to students. And that's very important as we're learning more about how students learn. Relevance is very important. School gardens can excite students to grow and consume more fresh vegetables and fruits, and can also provide learning labs that really enrich their academic objectives. The ideal school garden, in my opinion, really provides that student-grown produce that is then featured on the serving lines, because that just builds the interest across the board. So as a grower, distributor, or extension agent, how can you become a part of this trend, and why would you want to? Virginia Cooperative Extension agents impact so many components of farm to school. 4-H and master gardeners often play a huge role in school gardens. Family and consumer sciences agents provide nutrition and education curricula to schools that are eligible for the fresh fruit and vegetable program. Food safety agents provide resources on mitigating risks in school gardens and along that whole value chain from the farm to the school. And then you've got your ag and natural resources agents, and those are often the people who can really pull farmers and school nutrition directors together and help start that conversation. Small farm outreach agents are working to develop a farm tour program for school nutrition directors and other potential vendors in their regions. And I sound like a commercial for VCE, but this is just all to say that if you want to start with farm to school, your cooperative extension agents are going to be a really great place to start, as well as me.
Yes, in addition to cooperative extension, there are so many other organizations doing this farm to school work across the state. And a lot of those are working in really regional capacities. So rather than listing all of those here, we encourage you to, if you have some farm to school programs, feel free to also share those in the chat box. But hopefully you're reaching out to your extension agent. They'll also be able to connect you with other nonprofits and programs going on in your area. So let's talk a little bit about why a farmer might want to sell to schools. Trista mentioned it earlier, but local food has really been trending upward for the past 20 years. And there's really no signs that it's going to slow down. In 2017, Business Insider magazine reported that local food sales in the United States grew from 5 billion to 12 billion between 2008 and 2014. It also predicted that by this year, local food sales should be hitting about $20 billion in this country. The USDA's Farm to School Census in 2015 found that the primary and secondary schools purchased $790 million worth of local food in 2013 to the 2014 school year. And that is hopefully also supposed to rise. And there'll be, there was a 2019 census that will release that data. Farmers in Virginia are also recognizing the market opportunities of selling to local schools. In this survey response from the Farm to School survey by Virginia Tech and the Department of Education in 2018, Farm to School was the third highest potential market from farmer respondents.
And I am adding a little link to that Business Insider magazine right there so that you can see that local food data if you're interested. Okay, so we're going to talk about how farmers can really benefit from selling to schools. Well, it improves their visibility within their community. When a kid is coming home saying, hey, I ate Frogleaf Farms food today, then their parents are hearing about it too. Farm to School can enable producers to scale up, and what national research has shown is that the trend is that a lot of the farms that are participating in Farm to School nationally are farms that have traditionally been direct marketing, but are ready to try scaling up for a wholesale market in one or two key crops. And then using those key crops to sell to schools. There are other models that are also working with larger scale farms selling, but that is a national trend. Farm to School can take the seconds, the small ones, small apples or small potatoes, or the very large butternut squashes that would be hard to sell, and schools really like to use those. It develops customers for existing CSAs and markets when schools are used as a promotional opportunity. And we're also cultivating those future buyers with students when we're teaching them about the food system from their school lunches, where many students are getting the majority of their calories. Then that becomes an opportunity to help cultivate strong proponents of the food system in the future. And I want to go into a little research that's hot off the press from the University of Colorado that was presented by the National Farm to School Network last week. They found that while it is not clear that local labeling affects consumption patterns in schools, there is a significant relationship between farmers who are promoted in schools and their overall profitability in local markets. The farms that were succeeding the most with farm to school sales were maintaining their direct market avenues and taking advantage of those value-based food chains, such as food hubs, to sell to schools, restaurants, and other institutions. In fact, the researchers at Colorado State found that farms utilizing value-based intermediaries, such as food hubs, resulted in better profit margins than farms that just direct marketed. And the reason why is because it costs a lot to do direct marketing. With personnel and transportation, your profit margin decreases. So using those food hubs, they found developed better profit margins. The same researchers also broke farmer data down between struggling and thriving farms to examine how sales to farm to school would impact their businesses. And what they found was that farms that exclusively sell direct to consumers frequently struggle to be high-performing farms, and that farm to school sales could be a part of that overall marketing strategy that affects farm performance. Even if farms were not participating directly in selling to schools, these researchers found that that farms in the region were still benefiting from the public relations aspect of farm to school in the region. Selling to schools, providing field trips, or coming to speak to classes can improve the visibility of farming operations, and it can enable producers to scale up their key products. Creates a market for those seconds, creates an interest in existing markets, and really creates those conscientious consumers who understand the value of supporting local farms. Now that you have a sense of what farm to school is and where we stand in Virginia, let's look at some specific tools that are going to help us create those markets here in Virginia so that more Virginia grown foods are in Virginia students' mouths.
One of the most important aspects of creating new and reliable buyers is building relationships. In most school systems, the school nutrition director is in charge of planning menus and sourcing all of the ingredients. So that's going to be the first person you want to reach out to. When you reach out to them and express your interest in growing food, there'll be probably a lot of information that you get back. But in some cases, all of that activity around the cafeteria, from the sourcing to planning the menus, can be managed by a third party. Those are called food service management companies. So if the school service that you're reaching out to works with one of those, they'll be sure to tell you. And then you might have to work with them or have the school nutrition director kind of volley on your behalf. The contact person for the school nutrition program will be able to tell you that. Trista is going to be sharing a link. She just shared a link so that you have the contact information for all the school nutrition programs in Virginia. If you bookmark that page, you can kind of decide who to reach out to. And that will also be on the resource slide at the end. Creating these relationships with schools, it's going to take about 1 to 2 years from the time you actually first introduce yourself to when you begin selling products. It's kind of like growers plan their crops ahead of time with the buyer in mind. Schools have to plan their procurement ahead of time. Right now in the fall is when nutrition directors are starting that bid process. Or they're actually just starting to seek, and then the bid process will take place in the spring, because over the summer is when they need to get all of those purchases approved by their school board. So now is a really good time to start building those relationships. I would recommend, if they have the time, to try to get on a phone call or meet with them in person. Those are going to be, a really great first step to building solid relationships. If you can't do that and you have to rely on email, then you'll want to just make sure you're really personable in your email and accommodating and trying to ask all the questions, but also not overwhelm them. So here are some of the things that a school nutrition director will want to know. They're going to want to know, where you're located and what kind of crops you have available. They'll especially want to know if you have crops available during the school year. We'll go into a little bit later, if most of your crops are available during the summer, what you can do, but they're really going to know what you grow and when it's available. Big one is whether or not you have a food safety plan in place or GAP certification. We'll talk a little bit more later about what those are, but that's going to be some of the first things you want to tell them about yourself. If you work with any distributors already, they'll want to know that, but definitely want to talk about what your capacity is to deliver to them. Those are going to be the first ones. If they have more specific questions, we'll ask, but definitely want to cover, what do you grow, when is it available, do you have any food safety certifications, and where are you located, and how do you plan on getting the product to them? Trista, you might be muted.
Oh, let's try now. Sorry. Virginia Department of Education's Office of School Nutrition Programs has developed a template request for information, also known as an RFI, that can be used by growers, food hubs, produce companies, and others to start that vendor-buyer relationship. And I want to just say here that we're using language that targets crops, as in vegetables and fruits, but that does not limit any grower, a beef producer or a lamb or seafood or grains. All of that can be a component of farm to school, even local milk. So I just want to clarify that here. But an RFI is a good place to start. It's sort of the starting point of building that relationship between a school nutrition director and a potential grower or vendor. The vendor needs to know what the school wants, and the school needs to know what the vendor can provide. This template is in its final development stages, and it's going to be posted on the VDOE School Nutrition website, hopefully by next week. And then you can download it, fill it out, and provide your information to school nutrition directors. So this first page you see here is where the school nutrition director fills in their information about the point of contact and about their general school nutrition program. And this is going to answer a lot of the questions a grower might have about their nutrition program, like how many schools do they have? How many meals do they serve each day? What is the preferred delivery day? And I am going to put that link right now into the chat box.
Just posted it.
Oh, you did? Okay, perfect. Never mind. Okay, and then the second page is where the potential vendor can enter his or her information about the farm. So, your basic farm information, where you are, acreage and production, what kind of food safety program you have, what your food safety system is. And then the third page is really a matrix that both the farmer and the school nutrition director fill out for each other. And so the template is really designed for a school nutrition director to fill out first and then provide to the vendors. But you could just as easily provide your product availability first and give that to the school nutrition director to then give back to you. It's just designed for that flow of information back and forth. So if you look here, they're going to want to know your pack size, when the product is available, how much you anticipate being able to provide, and information regarding the farm of origin, because there is an example right now in Southside Virginia, the Southside Virginia Vegetable and Fruit Growers Association, that they're collaborating to fill a supply. And so we do want to have that farm of origin on the invoice for a school division so that the school can then promote them. And then others might be for a produce company or a food hub where that farm of origin is very helpful. The chart can be used for all products available, such as beef, seafood, and grains. And I would recommend that you have this information ready for school nutrition directors when you initially reach out to them. And once you've had that initial conversation by email, can we meet up? Can we have a phone conversation? And then when you have that main conversation, you want to make sure that you're providing this type of information. And then as a follow-up to that, you may want to invite potential buyers on a tour of your farm operation and be ready to share your food safety plan with them upon request. While GAP certification is not required by all school nutrition programs, it is required by some. And let's face it, it's the wave of the future, and it's a real best practice. FSMA is not going anywhere, so having a real food safety plan is imperative to sell to schools, while GAP is not imperative. So consider using this resource as a communication tool for reaching out to schools.
Another great resource, I'm going to give you a Reader's Digest version of selling to schools. My colleagues at Virginia Tech have a wealth of resources, including this one, which we've linked in the resources slide, that these are both for producers but also school nutrition directors. If you have any specific questions about food safety, I'm definitely not the expert, but Virginia Cooperative Extension and the Department of Horticulture has the Virginia Fresh Produce Safety website, and has a ton of resources for not just selling to schools, but all different markets. So definitely at the end, take a look at the resources slide and dig a little bit deeper into those. In addition to the RFI, there's another communication tool in Virginia that's a really great option for school nutrition directors and producers that are hoping to sell to schools. School nutrition professionals often say that they don't know how to find farmers that really meet their specifications. So thanks to Cooperative Extension, the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, and Farm Credit, we have the Virginia Market Maker portal to help fix this problem. Producers and buyers both create detailed profiles about what they have available and what they're looking for, and that allows them to appear in different searches. This is an example of what a potential search could look like. If a school nutrition director is looking for sweet potatoes, like for January Harvest of the Month program, she would go onto the Market Maker tool and she can type in the product she's looking for and the different criteria she has about the growing practices, or maybe she's looking for different food safety certifications, whether or not they deliver, all those sort of criteria. And then she can get her search results and see which is closer to her. Because of this, that's why it's really important that a producer take the time to really accurately fill in their profile so that they show up and match with as many searches as possible. As you add new products or change your certification, you can go back in and update your profile, which is really important so that they, one, can find you in their searches, but also know what's happening. This is an example of what a profile might look like. Jeter Farms down in Roanoke has taken the time to add photos and a business description, as well as linking to their social media and some of actually their business connections. So this is a really good example of a built-out profile. And you want to kind of try to make your profile, you don't want to have any blank fields. So if you're already selling to schools or any other wholesale channels, listing those out in the connections is a really good way to show school nutrition directors or other buyers that you have experience in this realm. If you have other types of business enterprises, like you might have an agritourism operation on your farm, you can list those out in the different tabs. So you can be searched by multiple features and by multiple buyers. But that's a really good indicator for a school nutrition director that you might be open for field trips in addition to supplying to the cafeteria. And that's a really nice bonus for them. So as you're building your market maker profile, which is completely free to do, make sure you check the farm to school box in the methods of sale section if you want to appear in those search results. In addition to the search feature, Market Maker also has a buy-sell forum that sort of functions as a marketplace for direct sales. Buyers can post what products they're seeking, producers can post what products they have available, and both of them can contact each other directly if they're interested in the offer. Here's an example of what looking to sell post might look like. You can post these ahead of harvest, but just make sure to include that information along with your delivery capabilities and pack sizes and things like that. If you have more questions about Market Maker, just follow up with me and I'm more than happy to walk you through it or show you how to use the different features. So depending on what program schools are supplying. They will have very different needs for quantities. This will affect how the producer harvests, packages, different delivery requirements. So whether you are supplying to a single school or an entire division that includes multiple schools, they might be looking for just a week's supply of lettuce, or they might be looking for just a day for their taste test during farm to school week. Those are all things that you'll want to clarify when you're first talking with your school nutrition director and discussing purchases. School nutrition programs are also going to have very different demand than the average consumer or even restaurant buyers, because they're sourcing the most in late summer to early spring, which is not the most productive time for a lot of crops. So the seasonality doesn't have to be a disadvantage. You know, a lot of schools, the purpose of farm to school is to teach seasonal eating. So the joy of eating a peach during peach season and the hardy root vegetables in winter is one of the things that they're hoping students will walk away with. So, you know, it doesn't rule you out at all, but producers that have infrastructure for extending their season, like hoop houses and greenhouses, are really great candidates to consider selling to schools because they're going to be able to produce throughout the winter when schools are really looking to source. There are also programs through the summer to feed students throughout the summer through that child and adult care food programs project, and that includes general summer feeding programs and breakfast programs for at-risk, but it also includes early child care centers year-round, and that would really help you, you know, be able to sell products when harvest is in full swing.
Right. Let's go to that summer food service program for just a second, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity to expand this area. In 2018, Virginia Summer Food Service Program served over 3.8 million meals when school was out of session. And summer meal reimbursement is a little bit higher than reimbursement during the school year. So that makes it a little bit easier for schools to afford those fresh products. Virginia Department of Ed has collaborated with the Virginia Department of Health for the past several summers to promote Summer Food Service Program, also known as SFSP. There's always an acronym for everything. Last summer was such a cool example of a feeding site at a local WIC clinic. More recently, we partnered with Virginia Farmers Market Association to establish an SFSP feeding site at a farmers market in Virginia. And there are ways that we can cross-promote summer feeding and increased family-wide consumption of those fresh vegetables and fruits. And I say vegetables first intentionally. We always say fruits and vegetables, but we know that based on CDC results, students are eating almost enough fruits each day, but there's still an underconsumption of vegetables. So I think our emphasis in the Office of School Nutrition is really to think about vegetables first, put them first and foremost in the spotlight so that we can help increase that consumption for overall student health. So last summer, let me just tell you about a really cool exemplary summer food service program site, and it was at the Stanton Augusta Health Department. Stanton City Schools was the sponsor of this site that operated just one day a week throughout the summer at the local WIC clinic. So at the same time, that health department in which the WIC clinic was located hosted a farmer's market. That farmers market accepts WIC and SNAP benefits, and on top of it all, it also participates in the Virginia Fresh Match program. And the Virginia Fresh Match program provides like a double fresh produce for SNAP and WIC benefits. So it's a double down dollar fresh produce program. So to put it into a perspective, a parent or guardian has to bring their children to their SNAP and WIC meetings. And they bring the child or teen into the site. They have their meeting with the SNAP and WIC representative at the Department of Health. And the child gets a free meal. The adult is accessing all the services at the WIC clinic, and then they can use their WIC or SNAP benefits to shop at that farmer's market and receive double dollars toward fresh produce. I just think it's a great example of these wraparound services that are providing access, especially for families who might not have the same access to food that, that others do. So the meals bonus, the meals at the food service site were nutritious and locally sourced. Stanton City schools were sourcing local food from Project Grows, Allegheny Mountain Institute, and local food hub to offer that fresh seasonal produce and part of every single meal at that site. And they used beautiful packaging, they used nice signage, so that they were also incorporating that educational component. So students and their parents were able to learn where the food came from. Another example is in Louisa, they have a mobile feeding site. So they take those summer lunches to the students around the county. And once a week on Thursdays, they partner with the local food pantry to provide a mobile food pantry so that the parents and guardians who bring the child to the feeding site can also leave with fresh vegetables and fruits. At VDOE, we're trying to share this type of best practice out to all the summer food service sponsors, with an emphasis on including fresh local foods to increase access to healthy food to those children who may need it the very most. There are a lot of opportunities for schools to purchase quantities of fresh fruits and vegetables for promotional opportunities. Harvest of the Month, I'm going to go into a little bit more. It's such a great program. It's a campaign that we started with the help of City Schoolyard Gardens in Charlottesville and the Virginia Foundation for Ag in the Classroom. It's a free resource designed for child nutrition programs so that anyone can celebrate the seasonal availability of those 12 vegetables and fruits. We hope to see these in libraries and health departments and WIC clinics and farmers markets across the state, not only in schools. So what the campaign consists of is these beautiful posters that feature the 12 vegetables and fruits. It has a user guide. It has point of sale signs in English and Spanish where they're laminated so that the school nutrition program director can write in the name of the farm. It has a harvest map, commercial scale recipes so that they can make these featured vegetable and fruits in commercial scale kitchens, and also family scale recipes in English and Spanish so that those recipes can go home to families. In addition to that, there are lesson plans developed by Ag in the Classroom and the Farm to School logo and user guide, which is available for free for anyone to use. If you were thinking about starting to grow for one school division, I would recommend starting with one or more of these 12 crops so that you aligned with the Harvest of the Month campaign materials. These 12 crops were selected with feedback from VDACs and the local food hub regarding product availability and seasonality in Virginia specifically. And each of these crops is accompanied by lesson plans developed by Virginia Ag in the Classroom. And the lesson plans can be found in a link that we are going to post in your chat box directly. The Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program is a program that schools in higher poverty areas can receive, and they provide a nutritious snack and nutrition education in classrooms every week. These programs can be bid separately from a typical produce bid, and school divisions can write in their bids that they prefer local products when they're available. This type of language can be incorporated into all the bid solicitations and is called geographic preference. The Farm Bill of 2008 included the Geographic Preference Act, which allows schools to give preference in their bid processes to local products. There's also a lot of other ways that you can, times and opportunities to promote local schools. Ag Literacy Week in March, and School Breakfast Week, Farm to School Month in October. These are just great opportunities to get your foot in the door as a promotion and see what it's like working with schools. It's important that growers who are wanting to sell to schools understand just a little bit about the federal procurement guidelines that school divisions have to follow if they participate in the National School Lunch Program. So it's all based on the quantities they plan to purchase. they can, if it's below their small purchase threshold, they can do an informal bid process. And if it's above their small purchase threshold, then they have to use a formal bid process. So in this slide, you see that the federal procurement threshold, small purchase threshold is $250,000. Virginia's is $100,000, and the schools might even be more restrictive than that. I know some schools, a lot of schools actually, their small purchase threshold is $5,000. So you have to use the most restrictive threshold. If the school division says 5,000, then it's 5,000. So then let's talk, if you're going to use the small purchase threshold, there are two different ways to do that. Small purchases in a small purchase procedure, then it used to be called 3 bids and a buy. A school division would need to reach out to qualified vendors and find out the price from those qualified vendors for the product that they're looking for. So for example, say a school wants to buy cabbage for their November harvest of the month. They want to make coleslaw with a locally farmed catfish. Their small purchase threshold is $5,000. So this means that they could buy up to $5,000 of cabbage in that one transaction without going with a formal bid process. So maybe early in spring, they call or email all the farmers in the area who grow cabbage and ask who could have the quantities available in November that they need. Farmer A would respond that they could provide the requested amount for $3,500. Farmer B said, no, I can't provide that much cabbage for you, sorry. And Farmer C says they could grow that much cabbage for $5,500. So in this case, the school would want to document the responses that they received, and they would go with Farmer A, the farmer who could provide the requested item for the lowest cost. And for the informal bid processes, a school division can just reach out to local providers. They don't have to cast that net to include non-local products. That's one way that they can target local foods. And once you've learned what it's like to grow for a school, you might want to consider a forward contracting process. So in forward contracting, the school division solicits a bid for growing specific items for their school nutrition program. They would follow these exact same procurement guidelines, and depending on how much they were asking for in the forward contract, it would be either an informal or formal bid process. And the formal bid process would be like, they might have a lot of criteria that all vendors would have to meet. It would be a sealed process. The vendors send in their responses, and then they use a rubric to determine the best vendor that they will go with. It's just a more formal process, really. So forward contracting could go either way, depending on how much they were asking for. And how it would work is the school would develop the procurement guidelines and look for the vendor or vendors that can supply what they're looking for. Then they would develop a contract with that grower or vendor. And forward contracts can ensure that the school will buy what the farmer grows for them. So it's a little bit more security for the farmer. And usually there are clauses in forward contracts that spell out like an act of God contingency plan. So a school isn't left without anything to feed the children in case of a hurricane or a drought that ruins those farmers' crops. I think I know of 2 examples of forward contracts in Virginia, and we'd like to see these kind of forward contract processes develop here, because I think it provides that security for growers that they're looking for as they're developing their market plan.
So that's all really important information to keep in mind, just to know what the school nutrition director is actually going through. Another thing to be aware of is that, you know, each school division has a very different set of circumstances, and we mentioned that earlier. The things you want to consider is you know, how many locations and how far you will be delivering, just so you understand what the school's delivery needs might be, because that all is going to determine the type of vehicle that you need, what storage, and also, you know, what your schedule and time availability is going to look like. So there's some questions that you can ask, like where are the drop-off sites? Is it a central location, or there's a number of drop-off sites? What days of the week or time of day does this food need to be delivered, and how does it need to be packaged? Does it need to be packaged in bulk or individually? But these will help you understand if you have the capacity to make those deliveries. Trista's going to post a link to a farm-to-school distribution cost template from Oklahoma State's Ag Product Center. And this is a really great spreadsheet to help a farmer determine whether it's more cost-effective to deliver to the schools themselves or to use a food hub or a distributor, some sort of intermediary to help with that process. And we'll also include that in the resource slide. If you go through that process of costing out your distribution and you start to question your ability to deliver the product to the schools, it might be smart to look into some other options, which there are a lot of partnership opportunities. You can aggregate product and also kind of cooperatively share distribution responsibilities with other growers, like the Southside Produce Growers Association in Southside Virginia. They cooperatively purchased a walk-in refrigerator, a refrigerated truck, and they took turns either driving the product or they hired a driver to get the product to the schools. And networking in this way to help both deliver and pull the product together is a great way to make farm to school work, especially if you're a smaller producer. And that's a really great option, but if you're going to be doing that, make sure that you're maintaining good handling practices. And Virginia Tech's food safety resources can be a good guide for when you need to implement good handling practices. Also, you can work with regional distributors like food hubs. They can take over the logistics of things. Marlon Showalter is a lettuce grower in Dayton, Virginia with Portwood Gardens, and he sells hydroponic lettuce year-round. He started just working with Harrisonburg City Schools. He delivered to each of the schools individually to make it work for them, and that worked so well that his business really grew, and he started to sell to schools in Northern Virginia and other cities across the state. And at a certain point, he realized that he was losing money because of the time and gas and other resources that it took to take the product to those schools, and he really couldn't afford to do that. So Local Food Hub was able to partner with him, and they make his deliveries to his further customers, but he still is able to make those local deliveries in Harrisonburg. And Local Food Hub is a really good partner and are aware of all the food safety needs when you're working with individual growers. So we've saved probably the most complicated topic for last, and I'm going to try to go through it, but not too quickly. And that is price. That is a big question that no one seems to want to talk about because it's not enjoyable, and it can seem rude, frankly, to talk about sometimes when you're trying to build a relationship and you don't know a person very well. But it's essential to the health of the business for the producer, and it's what the school nutrition directors have to be aware of and have to make work. It is, I think it's a misconception that when you're selling to schools at higher volumes that you're going to have to sell them at a discounted price. That is not true at all. If you want to think about it in this way, if your price is too low, then you won't be able to supply them for as long as both of you might like, and it won't be a sustainable business relationship. And if you can't sell to them in the long term, then school nutrition directors are going to have to go to the process of finding a new supplier for the products that you used to sell them. And they do not have the time to do that. So a fair price is not just a low price, but it's one that's healthy for both of the parties involved. So a little bit about how to figure out what the fair price is. Producers should be covering all of their costs and also making a profit, a fair profit. The first step to figuring out what that cost covering price is is to get a full rundown of what your costs are. There are we have some really great examples of enterprise budgets for producers, so they have a full picture of what their expenses are. But this is sort of a brief formula that's kind of a shortcut, but there's really no substitute to understanding your full budget. But that cost includes everything from the seeds to the water to the fertilizer, everything they use in production, the cost for storage, delivery, and even in your marketing with that product, and the time that you spent making those phone calls to school nutrition directors. That should all be factored into your costs. And you should have it based out by the unit. And so once you figure out what your fixed and variable costs are and your desired profit, you can start to get a sales price, but you also want to do some market research to figure out kind of what your competition is. The USDA AMS price index is a really great place to start. Trista will post a link to that in the chat box. But this is an average of what the going price, the wholesale price is for all different fruits and vegetables in the country. From this screenshot, you can see that sweet potatoes selling in 40-pound cartons are going to be going for $1.48 or $1.60 a pound. And that's just a starting point, and then it's your job to communicate with there based on what your costs are. If your product is differentiated in any way by, whether it's grown organically or no spray, or you have different food safety certifications, you want to make sure you mention that, and so that the schools know that you're selling a valuable product. This is a wholesale price is just a place to start, but there's some schools that can actually afford to play closer to direct market prices, like at a farmer's market or a farm stand, especially if it's a one-time purchase for a tasting program or something like that. If you have more questions about the pricing, I know I ran through that very, very quickly, but if you have more questions about that, consider the Virginia Market Ready online course that we're going to be rolling out soon. That will really walk you through and take a deep dive into not only price, but all of these aspects of direct marketing. So that will be a really great opportunity for producers that are on the webinar, or any producers that you might work with. So here's the list of resources that we mentioned throughout the presentation. There's 2 slides of this, so if you have questions about it, I can share these links with you directly if you reach out to me. But we have 2 minutes for questions. If anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat box or unmute yourself, and Trista and I will try to answer those. Or if you're shy, you're always welcome to follow up with us directly.
I just think while we're waiting for questions, just sort of to summarize, it's worth considering school divisions as a really stable market with consistent ordering 9 months out of the year. And then there's also opportunities for summer feeding and early care centers year-round. So, just consider those as also an opportunity to get fresh, seasonal, local food into those mouths of students, and provide an opportunity to educate those kids about the importance of their roles in the local food system. And if you don't ask questions today, I'm always available, and French is always available. And thank you for being on this webinar and helping in the roles that you play.
I don't think we have any questions right now, but Trista and I will stay on the line for a minute if there's anybody that does want to continue the conversation. But for everyone else, thank you all so much for your attention. I'm really excited about what all of our partners are doing to increase farm to school sales. So we hope that you all will take this webinar and continue to spread that information. And I will also be sending out a recording of this whole webinar in case you jumped on late, or somebody that might be interested. I will be sending it out to the folks that registered.